people that are not here with us, but they are on Zoom. Got it. Cool. Okay, cool. So I just want to make sure everything was set up and ready to go. So first, I'll just say hello. My name is Kelsey. We currently have 6 people here, which is good. Oh, wrong thing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We will have both me as well as one of our instructors, Andrew. People that are not here with us, but they are on. Okay. So we will have Andrew with us here in just a bit. And let me go ahead and get us started. Cool. So today, let me go ahead and share this. And then if you are able to see my screen, go ahead and post in the chat a thumbs up, a yes, anything is helpful just to make sure that we're all viewing the same thing. And then I'll go ahead and get started. Perfect. Thank you so much for everyone for participating. So today we are having a parent seminar, and this is a parent seminar that is focused on competitions, and specifically in our case today, the AIO, which is what I'll refer to it as kind of going forward, but just so everybody knows what the acronym is, it's called the Australian Informatics Olympiad. So this is a competition. Actually, let's not get ahead of ourselves. What we'll talk about today is what is AIO, who can participate, some of the benefits, a little bit about the technical things. So like how to submit your code, what languages are appropriate, a little bit about what you kind of want your environment to be like when you're taking the test. We'll talk about how to prepare. Some contests that are similar to the AIO. So what other contests kind of are equivalent in difficulty, just to give you an idea of what to expect. We'll do a little conclusion, and then I'll offer a space if anybody has any additional questions that they want myself or Andrew to answer once Andrew's here. He is currently teaching a class, so he'll be here shortly. First, I'm going to go ahead and launch the entry poll. It's 4 questions. It should be pretty quick. There are a few. It's what are you most interested in learning about? Are you currently signed up for a fall class with us? Do you have any computer science experience, you or your student, depending on if you are the student or the parent currently joined with us? And have you ever attended any seminars with us? These polls are just helpful for us to kind of gauge what people are interested in, what we should have more seminars on, and kind of just how we can talk about things. So if you already have a good amount of experience, then we can focus more on some more of the technical things. But if you don't have a lot, then we're happy to go over all of the information. So once everybody fills that out, I'm going to launch it this time. And then I might launch it again once we do have a few more parents. So we have 4 out of 7 people done. So just 3 more, and then we'll move on to getting into what AIO is. Also, if you do have any questions throughout the seminar, you can feel free to post them in the chat. I will have the chat up along with, the participants and the polls. So if I don't get to you right away, just feel free to raise your hand or let me know. And I'm more than happy to go ahead and come back to questions as well. All right. Wow, we have a lot of first seminars. Yeah. Cool. We have a good amount of differentiating experience. For anybody who just joined, feel free to fill out the entry poll that should be popping up on your screen. That's just going to give us a little bit of information on who you are and how we can tailor this seminar to fit you best. Cool. All right, so I'll let that stay up for a little while longer, just in case we do have anybody else who pops in. It should pop off your screen once you're done. If it doesn't, or if it's a bother to anyone, just let me know and I will get rid of it. So moving on to our first slide, which is just talking about me and Andrew. So I'm Kelsey, obviously, and I work for the operations team. You might have talked to me if you have enrolled a student or had any questions. There are a few of us on the operations team, so might not have spoken to me exactly, but that's where my expertise is. I've worked here for about 3 years. And I've just helped parents and students kind of figure out their way through high school computer science and what options are available, and really what you can do with it as a younger student. And then Andrew T is one of our senior instructors. He is really, really good at the USA Computing Olympiad classes, all of our higher level classes he excels at. He's a great teacher. If you're a student and you've had him, awesome. If you're a parent and you've had him as a student for your teacher, also awesome. He is super knowledgeable. And so I'm really excited to have him for the technical bits because I don't necessarily always know all of the answers there, but he should be able to give more clear, understandable answers. So let's move on into kind of a general overview of what even is the Australian Informatics Olympiad. So this contest is an annual contest. It's not in person, but you do have to join online at one specific time. That's August 23rd. We'll get a little bit more into that later. And it is held in Australia, though we've looked at all the rules and it seems that anybody can participate. So we've reached out to them a few times. This contest generally aims to identify talented students within Australia and around the world, and it is linked with the International Olympiad of Informatics. So it can be kind of correlated with the USA Computing Olympiad in terms of it sending students to the IOI, or the International Olympiad of Informatics. So these different tests that students will undergo kind of challenge your problem solving skills, your skills with working with algorithms, as well as general programming. So there is kind of the speed aspect to it, as well as your understanding of code and how to make it function well in that specific competition. I always say that competitions are a lot like tests, and I think that this one is similar in that way. You are testing your knowledge, your speed, and your ability when you're taking computer science competitions, just in general. So that's something to keep in mind, both for preparation and for understanding how the test works itself. Sorry, I just want to make sure Andrew is able to get in. Good. Okay. So moving on, does anybody have any questions about what AIO is, just in general? I think we all kind of have an understanding of, what a computer science competition would look like. And this doesn't really stray from that norm. So moving on, we can discuss who can even participate. So a lot of different competitions will have levels, ranges, but whether it's an age range, a grade range, or a skill level range, AIO is generally open for students in year 7 to 12. And we did a little bit of research, and for the most part, their 7 to 12 lines up with the US system of school. Obviously, like the UK is a little bit different, and I think even Canada is different in certain provinces. But from what we can understand, this is generally the same as grade 7 to 12. So it is very similar to the American Computer Science League, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But regardless of age or experience, any student with the passion is encouraged to take part or try. Even with the USA Computing Olympiad and other competitions, we always encourage students to at least try. If you are at a point where you're still using primarily drag and drop coding, so you're still kind of in that core one to two level, this might not be the best place to start. There are other competitions that are a better stepping stone than this one may be. This one's probably better, obviously, year 7 to 12. You're in middle school, you're comfortable with typing code, and you have a good foundation. And I think that's probably the best area to start. So the materials are designed so that they can accommodate a wide range of ages. Generally, it is targeting more high school students or more people who have that skill level. But like I said, it does have some of those problems, questions that, if you are younger and you want to try, we would always say, go ahead and try. There's no real negative if you don't do well the first time. A lot of times you have to keep working on problems like these in order to get better at them. So that kind of sums up who is able to participate or what ages, kind of the expectation there. So moving on, any questions about age ranges, ability ranges, things like that, you can feel free to post in the chat or send me a chat message if you don't want to post in the general chat. You can just make sure it says hosts and panelists, and I'm the only one that's going to get it. So, all right. So as we're discussing, ages, what even is the Australian Informatics Olympiad? It's also important to discuss what are the benefits, or what would the reason be if you wanted to participate in this. In addition to obviously providing a space to practice what you're learning, it also provides students an opportunity to challenge themselves in real world problems. So as we go through, we might open up the actual AIO website. It was having a little bit of issue earlier today, so hopefully that might have been resolved. But it does give you algorithmic or just general problem solving skills that it allows you a space to test those. It also gives you or helps to foster critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, and those things span further than just computer science. Obviously, we all know that we have to deal with problem solving, allotting time for certain things. There's all kinds of things where learning these things at a younger age or understanding them is going to give you a better stepping stool for moving forward when you are dealing with different questions or difficulties. So we do have a question, and it's just, how do you prepare for multiple competitions at the same time? And for that question, I think it's good to think about how much you can handle as a student, as a parent. You've got to help out your students and help guide them, because you have more of an understanding of what burnout look like, what those difficult things can look like. Primarily for competitions, it would depend on which competitions you're taking. So a lot of competitions are very algorithmic based. So you're trying to learn to answer a question, do it quickly, and do it in a concise way where your code can run effectively. So I think that the best way to prepare for multiple competitions is probably to determine how many you can feasibly take on, because that is a real question that we want to consider. And then from there, a lot of these websites, and we'll go over this with AIO specifically, but as you go through kind of that preparation point, you're going to have to use practice problems or old problems from the websites. They generally will have a practice space. USA Computing Olympiad does. The Australian Informatics Olympiad does. Most of these competition websites have old problems, and the best way to prepare is to consistently practice. You're putting in a lot of a time investment, and there's a reason for that, because these competitions aren't always easy. And so you want to make sure that you're spending a good amount of time getting familiar and comfortable with the material, but also getting comfortable speeding up how quickly you can answer these questions, or take care of creating the code and then running it and getting it ready. So it's both preparing in terms of material and preparing in terms of time management. And then I'll answer the next question a little bit later. The question is AIO a team event or an individual competition? So I'll answer that a little bit later when we talk a little bit more about what kinds of competitions are similar to the AIO. So continuing through, in addition to just the general life skills that you're going to be getting from competing, practicing, you could also call it, because these competitions are real world practice. You'll also, these are top performing students in the AIO, but they can be eligible to represent Australia in international competition, similar to the way that the USA Computing Olympiad, if you can make it to platinum. Obviously, these are really, really high goals. and that's not unattainable. But with the AIO, it's similar to the USA Computing Olympiad, where if you do really well, you are able to go on and participate in the International Olympiad of Informatics. Give me 1 second. Andrew is working on joining, so I'm going to make sure that he has the. All right. And while I'm kind of working on this with Andrew, I will go ahead and answer the next question because I do think that kind of ties into where we're at. We're about to go into some of the technical things, so I'll get that out of the way before we do that. So the AIO is technically an individual competition. So the AIO, what will happen is that we will register a school. It's very similar to the American Computer Science League, where we register a school and then you as a student are registered underneath our school heading. And then as we are registering you, technically our school, I believe, like ACSL, they aren't super clear on it. We will participate as a school organization. But for the actual test, you as a student will be filling out your own test and completing the work on your own. So it technically could be considered, I believe, a team competition because I think we'll be ranked as a team, but you will also be ranked as an individual student, and that will be the ranking that matters the most. Because unlike ACSL, we can't subset people into groups, and we do want everyone to be able to participate. So they will give you your own individual score. From what we could gather from their website and from our attempts to communicate with them. Let me see. I do have one more question, and I think Andrew might be able to answer this a little bit better than I can. But where are my participants? There. Okay. The next question says any minimum core level 4B, 5B, etc. you should be in before finishing, or finish before preparing for these competitions. So each of the competitions are different. The AIO being similar in that. So the USA Computing Olympiad, as we know, is a very high level, very difficult competition, and it's gotten more difficult over the past few years. So what used to be not super difficult is now more and more difficult. So we generally for that competition would require somewhere in the 5A range, core 5A. For this competition, we have kind of had that discussion. And as a group, I believe that if you're in or completing core 4A, core 4B material, that sort of level is where we think that you'll be comfortable with trying the material. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will pass with flying colors or do astonishingly well. This is also our first time competing or participating in the Australian Informatics Olympiad. And so, Andrew's here. Hooray. Can you unmute yourself? Probably not. Let me check. Andrew Moore. There you are. Now you're a panelist. Can you hear? Can you see? Where did you go? What? Let me see. There you are. Perfect. So Andrew can maybe help a little bit more with that question. Andrew, if you have any input on, or if I'm incorrect in saying that Core 4A / Core 4B is a good space to be in order to try and participate with the AIO.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. By the way, Kelsey, it says I can't turn on my webcam because the host has stopped it. I don't know if you have any setting you can turn on. I guess it's okay for me to just talk and everyone can listen without seeing me. Yeah, you're exactly right. Core 4A is sort of where we begin our more technical and middle to high school level work. And that's definitely what the earliest AIO problems are targeting to get students started. The logic of those problems isn't incredibly complicated. Some are very simple and almost more of a test of the basic syntax that we do cover, and students start to have a good technical understanding of that around Core 4 level. And then the problems on any one AIO contest, they're definitely a spectrum. It's not expected that any person will be focused on one particular problem. Sorry, it's not expected that any person will be challenged by all problems. Any beginning student will be challenged more by the earlier problems and probably just not really get to or not be able to do the later problems. That's by design, and nobody needs to be sort of discouraged or panicked because they can't do all 6. Only the really, really, really well-trained, like even better skills than we have or that I have as an instructor would be able to do all 6 problems perfectly in the time limit because it's intended for the absolute top competitors in the whole country. Yeah, someone with Core 4 experience could probably do the first couple problems. Someone with Core 5 experience who's been doing well with those classes could probably do at least the first half of the problems. Someone who started training on like USICO Bronze Division could probably do pretty well with the first 4 out of 6 problems, or maybe even the 5th problem. And someone with USICO Silver experience could probably do a good chunk of partial credit for even the very last and hardest problem. So it's definitely a spectrum. We didn't even write all that down because it's not important to obsess over what exact problem you should get to. Just know that it's a spectrum of difficulty that the more advanced you've gotten, the more you're going to feel comfortable doing. But you can definitely get started really early because those early problems on each contest are designed for that.
Cool. I did make you co-host, so you should be able to share your video. Perfect. Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. So perfect timing, because now we are going to move into kind of the more technical side of things. So I'll go ahead and let Andrew take over. Andrew, you can either take over my screen share or just let me know when you want me to.
I think we'll just cycle around without changing the screen share. So this isn't super technical, like how to install things on your computer or anything. Basically, any regular programming setup will be fine, very similar to the other competitions like ACSL, or even if you've taken one of our core classes at the AP level or above, you've seen how those systems work, and you can just install that kind of system on your own. But the AIO is actually especially cool because you can even test your code and write your code directly on the website, or at least their practice site allows that. We're not actually totally sure if the final contest site does, but the practice site does. So they make it fairly easy to kind of use whatever programming system you want to try writing solutions and write your code. But yeah, very similar to what you do for other contests and other KTBYTE classes. So you can use several languages, as it says here. Python 3, version 3 is the one that is current, although some people still use version 2, Java or C++. And that's very similar also to other programming competitions. One piece of advice that that is well worth keeping in mind is that if you wanted to go really far with the programming competitions, Java or C++ tends to do better with Python for any sort of speed related task. So part of the goal of all these competitions, including AIO, is write a solution that will run quickly enough to solve, to basically make calculations and solve problems relating to a fairly large amount of data without being too slow. slow. You need efficient programs. So Java and C++, you have more control over that. But Python is still great if your student happens to be a little younger and hasn't taken some of the more AP level classes yet and knows Python better. That's totally fine for getting started. And it's probably not going to be an issue other than on the later problems in AIO, like maybe problem 5 and 6 on any contest. So they can still solve a lot of it with no problem with Python. So this, again, is like these other systems where you'll write solutions and even test them on your home computer. So you do want to set up your computer ahead of time to be able to create Java programs or Python programs, but you will submit them through the website. A lot of students or parents, when it's your first time doing contests like this, it's a little confusing because you might think that the goal is to write a program and then submit the output of the program. Like if the answer to a question is 5, you might think that you write a program, the program says, the answer is 5, and then you write the number 5 in the website. That is not how these work. You submit your whole program. You like copy and paste your program into the website, or you save your program in a file and you submit that to the website. Again, the AIO site actually lets you do it either way. You can copy paste it or submit it as a file, but it's your work, your programming work that you're submitting. It's not the answer the program gave you. And the program will actually be run automatically by the website system to see how well your program does on a lot of different pieces of data. So it's kind of like, well, maybe we don't need to get into too much detail on that, but there are other problems like that where there's like a general way to solve the problem. That's what you're programming. And then they'll actually test if your general way of solving the problem works on a lot of specific examples. Kelsey, I guess, yeah, we're still there. So the last bullet point here is about the subtasks. This is similar to several other things or other contests where you don't need to do a problem perfectly to get credit on it. Now, on the AIO, there are 6 problems, but every one is broken down into subtasks. So I mentioned the idea that, for instance, a student who has done fairly well in USICO Silver training with our courses or just training on their own, they could probably solve a good chunk of even the toughest problem on the AIO, but probably not get full credit unless they're really, really clever and advanced and maybe even have trained on higher level USICO work. But it's nice and clear on each problem. For instance, just the one I was working on last night to sort of get a sense of the difficulty. The last problem needed you to draw some conclusion about a piece of data if there were 1 million pieces of data. So that's a lot of data to process. But you could actually still get, like, I think it was 85% of the credit on the problem if you were able to write a program that could solve it if there was only 1,000 pieces of data. So basically, your program wouldn't have to be as efficient as the full solution, and you'd still get a lot of credit on the problem. So that's definitely a strategy to keep in mind and something to maybe encourage you, even if you look at a problem and you think, I don't know how to solve this well enough, you can actually probably still solve a good number of pieces of it and still get some good partial credit on that problem. Yeah, so I guess that's it for that slide, Kelsey. Do we want to go back to preparation, or did you already talk about that? So I talked a little bit about sort of the USICO classes here. Maybe I'll start at the bottom because I kind of already mentioned it, and Kelsey was already talking about that as well. Core 4 through 6 is essentially our middle school and high school level curriculum where it's getting very technical. So these aren't focused on contest problems themselves, but they do have the skills you need. So it's perfectly fine to start any of these contests if you just have those sort of basic skills. And obviously, if you have taken through Core 6, which is college level material at KTBYTE, then you'll feel even more capable of sort of improvising and making up strategies for the later problems. But we do also have our actual classes focused on training for the USICO competition. Kelsey, I don't know if you talked too much yet about how this is similar to USICO, but that's sort of the most popular one in the United States. It's the USA Computing Olympiad. So we've had classes for those for years and years at KTBYTE. And because USICO actually breaks down their contest difficulty into 4 different levels, we have oriented our classes around those levels. So just know that the AIO is mostly corresponding in its hardest problems to USICO bronze, silver, maybe a little bit of gold division work. So if you're taking our prep classes for that, that is excellent preparation for the AIO. But if you're just getting started with this or a younger student, yeah, you don't even need to have studied USICO contest work to do the earlier problems on this contest. So, and I suspect we don't know too much about sort of the scoring spectrum for AIO, but I suspect even if you only like complete the first 3 problems on a contest, you'd probably be ranked pretty highly among like AIO competitors. That would be my guess, because it really is for a wide spectrum.
For Andrew, just for your input on something, there was a question earlier. There were 2, but one of the ones that I think maybe you could expand on, or just give, because I gave a sort of basic answer. The question was, how do you prepare for multiple competitions at the same time?
Yeah, I guess that does relate back to, we can start with our courses, but also just speak more generally, when you take, for instance, a USICO bronze prep class with us, we're going to look at a bunch of different problems, which are really, really similar to the format of an AIO problem. And in our classes, we also do sometimes cover like made up problems that aren't actually a USICO problem at all, or we might actually look at an AIO problem or a CCC problem, which is the Canadian competition. So basically, they're all fairly interchangeable. In terms of the skills that they're testing, you can really build those skills with problems from any of these contests, or even a made-up problem designed to be in the same style of these contests, or on sites like LeetCode has a huge library of a lot of this style of problem. The hardest part for most people is figuring out sort of the difficulty levels and how they match up. So that's why we mentioned that the AIO is really lower than USICO level. So if you want to prepare for USICO, you can take our bronze prep class. You'll be prepping already with that, also preparing for sort of mid to higher level AIO problems at the same time, just by virtue of working through the logic and practicing the Java coding for those problems. For if you are more kind of introductory and you're finding the earlier AIO problems fairly difficult and you're just getting to that level of programming, you probably wouldn't want to try to also be starting USICO Prons right away. We usually recommend Core 5B class, which is sort of in the middle of AP level, high school level work before you take our bronze prep class. So you don't necessarily need to prepare for all at the same time, but if you're at the right sort of experience level, it'll kind of be automatic. You'll kind of be doing one problem and those same skills could easily show up in any of these contests. The other thing, though, is just know that the way the websites work and sort of the format of how you set up your code, it's slightly different for each contest. So that's the one thing that's a bit trickier about preparing for all the problems or all the contests at once. Focus on the next one coming up in terms of the format of the problem, but in terms of the logical thinking and the problem solving skills, it's really very similar. So you don't need to stress out much at all about that. Practice a USICO problem, and you'll be getting better at AIO problems also. And I guess I could also mention, Kelsey, you might have already said this, we have just recently started introducing a class focusing on below USICO bronze level, where we are focused on some of the easier CCC problems and AIO problems, so that even younger students, if they'd like to get some practice with us with the lower level competitions before you get to that USICO tier, you can do that too. But to be honest, we've definitely seen students who maybe completed Core 5A class, they've never taken a USICO class. They're often able to solve the first couple AIO problems without even, specifically training for it. Just a matter of looking at the website. And there is a great practice website for AIO. Just like if that's the contest that's coming up, as it is right now, check out the site, try submitting some problems. Feel free to get in touch with us if you have any trouble like using the site or figuring out what to do. And also take a look at our blog posts where we've written some guides on that. But once you know that format, the problem solving is similar for them all. And I guess that brings us back to this slide. So let me see if I've already addressed some of these things. I already mentioned some of those fundamental skills you can get in our core classes, and then problem solving skills mainly just comes through practice. Even our Core 5A class, though, for instance, we have some basic problem solving skills there where you might know how to write a loop, but our Core 5A homework will ask you kind of a new kind of question with a loop where you have to think about a particular setup and apply what you know. So that's definitely hard to do the first time, but it gets easier and easier the more problems you look at, the more you practice with it. I did just mention the AO website. It's a really nice website for practice, a good interface, and it lets you submit problems a couple different ways. Just a matter of making the login for it and actually trying it. I think sometimes students are a little hesitant to just try things. They feel like they need someone to guide them through it. But I think most students would find if you just go to, I think this is again in our blog post, and Kelsey, you might have this in some slides at the end, but the practice website is pretty straightforward. There's a button there to create an account, and there's a link somewhere to look at AIO problems, and you'll click on one of them. It'll give you the description of it. There'll be a tab that says how to submit it. So you just need to explore, just explore it, and any questions you can bring to us. But you might be surprised how easy it is to just get started and try doing some simple problems there. So yeah, I think we've kind of covered that slide then. Yeah, if you can go to the next one. Just closing out the questions we've answered. Oh yeah, so Kelsey, you actually kind of looked at this, but basically this relates to what are the rules, basically? What are you allowed to use? This contest, according to what we've been able to find out about it, again, it's our first time doing it, you're actually a little bit more open-ended about using written notes to help you here. To be honest, I'm a little nervous about saying like, yep, you can bring a textbook and refer to the textbook if you want help with that during the contest, because it's definitely not allowed in other contests. But their website has said that is the rule. So we believe that's the rule. More importantly, though, is definitely what not to do. You don't want to disqualify yourself or be cheating on the contest. Ultimately, that's just self-defeating to sort of pretend you're better than you are, which you're going to get caught at some point. And they do have like automated ways to check that. But obviously, there's no working with other students on this. This is an individual contest, so you shouldn't use any like cell phones to chat with anybody or be doing this like right next to somebody else that you're kind of working together on it. You also should be pretty restrictive about your use of any kind of electronics. You should be like browsing around websites to tell you how to do something. This does need to be your own work. But you can use any scratch paper you like. Making diagrams is really helpful. So having some scratch paper and pen and paper for that could be useful. Again, they have said that you can refer to written notes here, which is unusual for this kind of contest, but that may be the case. Yes. So that we'll go with what they say until we hear otherwise. But yeah, no mobile phones, no chatting, no, looking on the web for anything like that. And then, I was talking a little bit about how the others rank up. I guess I didn't talk specifically about ACSL and the Canadian competition, CCC. I think the Canadian competition is fairly similar to AIO, where it also has this setup where there's a broad spectrum in any one contest about how difficult it gets. So the students who are super duper experienced and well prepared will probably solve the first few problems in maybe half an hour to an hour, and then spend most of their time on the more difficult problems. And that's similar between CCC and AIO. I can't really speak to exactly how much they light up. It probably varies from year to year, whether sort of the first problem, the most easy one on either contest is easier than the other. So just know that around the core 4 level is going to be a good place to at least try things out in either of these contests. Whereas with USICO, it's much harder. ACSL is the American Computer Science League. That competition format is a little bit different, but it also has a programming portion. And I would say a junior division ACSL problem is probably a little bit more complex than the first couple AIO or CCC problems. So if you're already like doing ACSL junior division, doing programming there, you should definitely check out and try doing the AIO. You'll find the first couple problems probably fairly easy. And then, it gets more difficult from there as well. So I actually, we have not sort of participated in the British Informatics Olympiad, so I can't tell you too much about that. But yeah, the CCC, AIO, and USICO are the ones we know the most about. And we've already talked about how sort of doing any one helps you with the others too.
Perfect. So I'm just going to kind of wrap us up here. A quick summary. Obviously, we know that AIO is annual. It will happen one time a year currently. We talked about the age ranges, year 7 to 12, generally correlating with grades 7 through 12, focused pretty heavily on high school students, but all students who are in that age range are welcome to try it. And we think it's a great experience either way. And like we said earlier, you can use whatever preferred programming language you want within the scope of Python 3, C++, or Java. So that kind of summarizes where all the things we've talked about. I don't currently see any additional questions. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to post them, and we will go ahead and get those answered. And then I'm going to put up an exit poll. I'm going to go ahead and leave that open. If you don't have any questions, feel free to hop out as soon as you're done with the exit poll. If you do have questions, you can post them in the chat, or you can put them in the Q&A and we'll be happy to answer them. I will be posting one more blog post that I think is relevant and useful. It compares a few of the different computer science languages, or sorry, competitions, not languages. But then other than that, if you don't care about that blog post or don't feel like reading it, feel free to hop out after you've finished your exit poll. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I am sorry I couldn't be here earlier, but I was glad I was able to come in and help with some of those more technical things.
Well, I'm very thankful as well. I could not have done that. Awesome. And I did have the question, will we be sending out a video? The video will be live on YouTube because we are live on YouTube. So you can always watch it there. And I'll send out a link to that after this to everyone who was able to come, and to anybody who wasn't able to come. I'll go ahead and send that out. So thank you so much.
We still have people here, right? There was a question about ChatGPT, which, yeah, you're right. There's no ChatGPT, no online help